Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm assuming you can. Yeah. Thank you. Well, I hope you had a good lunch, and I hope you're following the rules that Uncle Tom has set up, and you're all behaving yourself in accordance with his rules. I saw those that he sent out. The purpose of this meeting is to test a hybrid meeting and see how well it would work. Originally, it was intended for new Rotarians, but then we changed the format a little so it's all Rotarians can join in, or members of our club. Now, I would particularly like to welcome today Anna Masatova and Nikinda Daniel, who are both new to our club, and more about them a little later. I'd also like to welcome Saraj Chopra and Candy Liu. Candy is, we've seen a lot of her recently, but they are relatively new to our club, although they are long-standing Rotarians. And I hope we have with us today Rotarians from Lima, Peru, Ian Sanders and his wife, Maria Carmen. If you're there, you're most welcome. Now, what we're intending to do is that President David will give us a talk about the history of the club. He has many of the archives from the time that we had York Gate cleared, and David has been looking through these, and he's going to give us a little talk about that. Then, after that, hopefully, if the arrangements allow, and I'm not in the room, so only Tom can tell me this, if the arrangements allow, I would like to have a brief chat with Anna Masatova and Nikinda and anybody else who would like to. And then I would like to say something more about Rotary beyond the club. Over to you.
Thank you, Past President Clive, for the introduction. And indeed, I have spent quite a lot of time learning about the history of the club over the last year, particularly. And I'd like to start by observing that we are currently 110 years old. And on the 3rd of August this year, we enter our 111th year. The history of any club is a succession of each of its members. We are standing on the shoulders of our forebears as we look at the club. So I'm going to consider why we are here and what that might mean to us, and then I'll pass back to Clive. We're here primarily because of the chap who's on the screen now. And I will just show a picture in the room, as you're seeing it on the screen, of Paul Harris. This picture was donated to the club by a member, Roy Plumpton, in 1956. But it is a picture of a much younger man than, because in 1956, Paul Harris would have been 87 years old. And he had passed his service to Rotary by then. But as a young man, in 1893, he came to London. And this history is about the role of the Rotary Club of London in Rotary. In 1893, steamships from the States tended to end up in either Dublin or Liverpool. And Paul ended up in Liverpool and made his way to London. At that time, London was the largest and most significant city in the world. By 1914, I think New York had taken over that mantle, but it was a very important place to visit and an important place to be. In 1905, when he was 36, he formed the first Rotary Club in Chicago. By 1911, when the London Club was formed, he had been he'd visited, I think, London 3 times, at least by then. And to him, having a club in London was very important. He saw it as a justification, really, for the opportunity that his concept presented the world. At that time, it was a club within a community. It was we now call it a CSR, corporate and social responsibility opportunity for business. It was a networking opportunity. There were no business networks in those days, but it was an exclusive opportunity for those that joined the Rotary Club in their city. And at that time, it was limited to large cities. He was trying to create his village in a large city. The first record of members, a membership list, was produced in 1912, when there were 64 members of the club. So between 1911, when the club was formed, and 1912, the club had already grown to 64 members. There were 17 members in 1911, on August the 3rd, 1911, there were 17. And by the same time the following year, there were 64. And that was just the start. Between then and 1920, the club grew to about 300 members. It was formed as a business link between Harvey Wheeler and Arthur Bigelow, who were both interested in supplying towels to organizations. It was a new idea to actually rent towels out rather than have to own your own towels. And that was the commercial opportunity that Harvey Wheeler brought to London through Arthur Bigelow. But it was definitely a commercial opportunity. Occupations of those members, some famous names there: Chamberlain, Fawkes, Thatcher, maybe Coburn, famous names, but ordinary people who were then having the unique right to represent their particular business activity in London. And the City of London was the central focus, but many of the members actually were from the West End of London. And there was a wide variety of members. But of course, when Paul Harris formed the club, he had a mining engineer and a coal owner. So there was always been a wide range of trades behind Rotary and within Rotary. The club was formed to promote service. We were formed to form service, not self. And that's a photograph of the badge that I'm wearing at the moment. Service, not self, rather than service before self. But the idea of service was critical to Rotary. The idea was that you actually had he who serves best profits most. And that, of course, was ambiguous in its interpretation. Now we would say he who gives most service gains most benefit. And I think that's the interpretation that has moved slightly from the original founders' intentions. It was a focused networking group, elitist opportunity for business men. And although we've always associated Rotary in our origins with businessmen, I do note that there was a club in Chicago formed at about that time, where one of the founders was a businesswoman who ended up marrying Paul Harris. I think he made a very good judgment there. From the start, our club has been international. In 1921, we knew New York club well enough to offer and accept a challenge from them. A challenge was to have the highest attendance percentage for each club. And in 1921, New York won. And we sent to New York a bell, a ship's bell. And there's a separate history to the bell, which I won't go into. But we so enjoyed the experience, and we failed by such a small percentage, I think it was less than 2%. We counter challenged the following year, and then we won the counter challenge. And they sent to us, and remember, this is by steamship, a chair. which they had specially made in New York. It's called, well, it's the New York Challenge Chair, and a magnificent thing it is. And those that see me on Zoom will see me sitting in it each week. But it was not a minor thing to give. It was quite an investment. And then one was investing in the focus of Rotary and focus of the future. These were not small gifts, either our ship's bell or the chair. These were saying Rotary is substantial and Rotary is important. We had grown rapidly, and by, as I said, by 1920, we had grown to 300 members, which was greater than our resources could actually accommodate. We had nowhere we could meet as a club with 300 members, but we didn't want to restrict the opportunity. We had been the first international club in 1912 when we got our charter, which was given us and signed by Paul Harris in Duluth, I think it was Minnesota, at the International Convention of that year. We were number 50. We were the first club to be formed outside of the first club to be chartered outside of North America. And that is a status that we've held to ever since. It's very important to us. We weren't the first club to meet. Dublin met before we did. Dublin was another British club, of course, at that time, and they were closer to the States than we were by steamship, but they didn't have the resources, or they probably couldn't afford to go to the international conference in 1912, which is what Arthur Biggood did. And so he established the club as the first chartered club outside of America. And we think that Paul Harris actually was wishing that to happen because of his connections with London. We've always been international. The people who are leading the charge to overcome those restrictions from the club, we wanted to overcome the barriers of access and make Rotary accessible to an awful lot more people than we as a club could accommodate. And there were various rules about you couldn't have a club within a club's territory, and our territory was the whole of London at the time. And there were various other things you couldn't do. But between Ted Unwin and Stanley Leverton. Ted was in advance of Stanley. So Ted was chairman of, or president of the club in 1923-4, and Stanley in 1925-6. But between them, they demonstrated the zeal of the Rotarians of the time to spread the message of Rotary. And they created a large number of other clubs. They supported the creation of a large number of other clubs. One which I had the privilege of attending this year was Margate's Club. And they were very, very pleased to have that association with us. So there it tells us a little bit about what Ted Unwin did under his picture. A mild-mannered fellow, but for all that, a very great achiever in terms of promoting Rotary. We as a club promoted the first district because we wanted to be able to share Rotary within the district. We were the first proponents of Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland. We were a founder of the British Association of Rotary Clubs in 1912, I think, or 1913. Which was a collection of other British clubs from, including Dublin, Edinburgh, Manchester, Liverpool, and Birmingham. And I've missed out a couple there. But sorry, but these individuals were just two of the 200 plus members of our club that were all missionaries for Rotary throughout the UK. And their work set the base for the expansion of Rotary within the UK. At that time, there was a tendency to want physical asset. So by 1921, we had our own premises. In 1921, we appointed our first paid secretary. And in 1921, we were looking to establish our own club. And over the following years, we did establish our own club, and it survived for quite a while. And we also became welcome guests at several significant London restaurants. I won't list them. But as part of that, come the end of the 1930s, we had property and we wanted to use it to establish the club as physical, not just theoretical. One of the elements of which was to have doors in which every member's death was recorded. So the first death recorded of a member of the club was in 1921, just 100 years ago. And this board, which was established between 1939 and 1941, and went as far as 1971, in which time we had recorded the deaths of 216 members, exemplified that. It was set inside some beautiful, probably Indian made, what we call doors, which were sold on, but we still have got that piece of furniture that you see in front of you, which is about 6 feet high. So physical space, the good, the bad, and the awkward. I'll come back to that in a moment. By this time, of course, Paul House is getting a bit older, and we've got other pictures that were donated us. I think this one came to us from Chicago, of Paul House at slightly more advanced years. That is a very familiar painting or familiar picture that you will see in Rotary clubs probably around the world. We actually influenced other institutions. Other institutions wanted to be part of us, and we had a reputation for getting things done. So, for example, after the First World War, we were thanked by the Ministry of War for helping returning soldiers. We've been involved in supporting charities of King George V, and subsequently, which was in fact the Playing Fields Association, which gave us a link eventually with Prince Philip, who took over from King George VI as patron of that. And we've been supporting that, supporting Duke of Edinburgh, supporting institutions. We also helped with the BBC, because Lord Reith of the BBC, well, he wasn't Lord then, but Reith of the BBC was a member of the club. And he brought to the club the opportunity to broadcast the first national broadcast from a Rotary club in the UK, which actually was one of the very first outside broadcasts. I think it was from the Savoy. Always international, and here's an example of some of the banners that we've exchanged with clubs over the years. Back in the 1920s, it was very rare to have a banner, and I think banners cost us about half a guinea each, and that was at a time when membership was a guinea. So we were very sparse with giving banners, and very few people gave them to us. But come the 50s and 60s and 70s, it became a tradition for any club visiting London to exchange banners with us, and we have thousands in store. Here are just a few selected, which represent Chicago, for example. We have an awful lot from the States, but we have a lot more around the world, which we have samples from their 100th, I can't just see it behind my screen, from their 50th, 75th and 100th anniversaries. We maintain close connections with number one club over the decades. We then, our relationship with space came to an end in 2019. This is moving out of York Gate. And this actually is the safe being moved out of York Gate. And I was glad I didn't actually have to, all I had to do was photograph it. I didn't have to help lift it. Between members of the club, we helped actually to sell, well, eventually we opened it and we found it contained nothing. And we managed to sell it for, I think it was about £25, wasn't it, Tom? which we were grateful for. But that was just a symbol of us vacating our premises at York Gate, and no longer do we have a physical space that we actually have the rights to display any material. So now, where are we? Typical Monday lunch. I've changed this photograph. But this was actually 2019 Christmas. Here we are, squeezed into the Chesterfield. The Salvation Army band in one corner, leading us in the carols. And I've included no people in this picture because I didn't want to offend anybody by showing the state they were actually in at the time. But another aspect of the club, we do have almost every week, we have a little item in the Daily Telegraph where we record the fact we've held a meeting. And this is, we are the only club in the country that does this. Now, is this a value? I don't know, but it's been part of the history, and we have Neville Schulman to thank for that. Neville, who probably had made the biggest single fundraising contribution to the club in its lifetime. So we have virtual meetings, we have physical meetings, we have touches of history. And I just wanted to summarize my view of the history of the club. The club was important to Paul Harris. He saw it as being international grasp. And although he had strong connections with Edinburgh, where his wife came from, and the first international conference in 1921 was in Edinburgh, it was London that did all the linking and supporting for that conference, and introducing, for example, the visitors to the conference to a reception, I think, at Buckingham Palace and Hampton Court, and meeting the great and the good, those that came from around the world to join us. We rapidly outgrew our resources, and we focused on overcoming the barriers for Rotary growth in the UK by creating districts, by creating Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland, by changing the rules in which clubs could be formed within other clubs' areas, and so on. And we have maintained a focus on corporate social responsibility for members, and allowed every member to actually communicate his soul of his ethical soul, his business ethical soul, to his community. We've been found useful by other institutions, government and the BBC, but we were a bit slow in allowing women to gain access. I've already mentioned that some clubs had women as founder members, whereas we had to wait quite a long time before we had women in our club. But they are now an important part of it. We're always seeking charitable endeavours with which to identify ourselves and our members, and we're still well placed, I believe, to lead Rotary development in the UK when we get our members fully engaged. So that's a quick run through, and I've left out a lot, but hopefully it gives you a picture of why the Rotary Club of London is what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Right. Thank you very much for that, David. I hope the people in the room at Chesterfield can see me. The next thing that we would like to do, if it is possible, and I'm looking to Tom and to, well, principally Tom, because he's in charge of the proceedings today, make sure everybody complies with the various regulations. Tom, is Anna Masatova with us, and is it possible, in accordance with the regulations, for her to come to the camera?
We're quite.
I'm pleased to see you back in London, Anna.
Thank you.
And I wonder if we could just start by talking about you. Remember one of the first questions I said to you, coming from Turkey, I couldn't understand that you had a name which sounded like a Slavic name. Would you like to tell everybody the explanation for that?
Yeah, so I'm half Turk. My mom's Turkish, my dad's Ukrainian. That's why my name is, not really Turkish, but more like Slavic.
Good, thanks.
Yes.
Now, What are your aspirations? You're back in London now. Work-wise, what are you looking to achieve? I know we've seen this before, but everybody else around here won't have heard that. So would you like to tell us?
I did politics for my bachelor's, and then I recently completed my master's in business management. And now I'm looking to work in the financial industry. I'm looking into investment banking, but it's such a bad time to be looking for a new job. So fingers crossed. But yeah.
But you were working in Turkey, weren't you?
I was in real estate in Turkey, but I realized that's not something that I'd like to pursue anymore. So I'm kind of transitioning from real estate to finance in London.
Good. And tell me, what attracted you to Rotary?
Two of my family members back in Turkey, they are the members of the Rotary Club in Turkey. And I grew up knowing about it, but when I graduated, I felt really privileged to have these degrees, and I just wanted to devote myself to the life of service. I wanted to give back and do something, and that's how I got in touch with you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And what would you like to see? What would you like to achieve within the Rotary Club of London? What's your aspirations there?
I'd like to work I'd like to contribute to like mental health, and I'd like to work with children, and I hope to, achieve that within the foreseeable future.
That's jolly good. Well, we're very pleased to see you, Anna. Thank you for
Thank you very
making the
much.
meeting today. Nice to see you back in London.
Nice to
and
see
we
you
hope
too.
you enjoy your time with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Hi, Clive.
Hello, Nakinda. Good to see you. How are you?
I am very well. I thought I would have seen you in person, but I suppose Zoom is fine.
I'm Zoom chairing it today, which is rather, we just wanted to try out, see how things would work. Nakinda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am Nakinda Daniel, and I am originally from Dominica in the Caribbean, and I have been in the UK for about 20 years. I work as a diplomat for the government of Dominica, and I have been doing that for 11 years now. I also have a business as a success coach, helping women to set and achieve their goals. So these are the two hats that I wear. And it has just been my privilege to be part of Rotary. This is my first in-person meeting. I have been attending the Zoom meetings over the last year. So I'm just really happy to be here with all of you.
And what first attracted you to Rotary?
Well, back in Dominica, I always heard about Rotary, and they were doing a lot of work in the local community. And it was always intriguing, but I never made any steps to join. So once I got in the UK, I kept saying that I will, and then kept procrastinating. But during the lockdown, if you didn't do the thing that you said you were going to do, it wasn't going to happen. So that was just my chance to move on joining.
Hello, I don't know what's happening there. Yes, I think it was interesting the number of members that we did manage to attract and who joined us have joined us during this period of lockdown. Some people thought, everything would go stale and we wouldn't get any new members, but we have been doing this. And Nakinda, what would you like to achieve in the Rotary Club of London? What's your goal?
Because coaching is my passion, and I know that you do mentorship with young people and young women, I would like to get involved in that and just help people to set powerful goals and have a strategic plan to achieve it. So if there's any way that I can bring some of that skill and expertise into Rotary, I would love to be able to do that.
Thanks very much. Well, we're delighted to see you. Formally welcome again. I know you've been with us for some time, but welcome again. And thanks very much for having taken part in this little chat here.
Thank you so much, Clive.
Let's
Thank you.
Give the floor. Thank you. Well, Sorry, someone was talking. What I always say to all the Rotarians when they join, please let us have your ideas. New people have new ideas and can probably tell us new ways of doing things. Okay, it doesn't mean the rest of us who of the existing members don't have ideas for how we can improve the club and different things that we can do, but often we are somewhat set in our ways, and we look at things the way we're accustomed to looking at them, whereas new members can come in with fresh eyes and can see various things and can suggest to us how we could take the club forward. We heard about Paul Harris. Paul Harris said, Rotary must at all times be evolutionary and at some times revolutionary. I think Rotary in general, we probably have not followed that. And sometimes Rotary has taken a long time to change. President David mentioned that we were originally a single gender club. Rotary became dual gender in 1989 officially. It took a long time to get there. There are a number of different clubs, as I've mentioned before at other ones of our meetings, that are being established. And we need to look at how we operate so that we are attractive. And I always say to people, it's not about recruiting new members, it's about attracting new members. We've got to be attractive to those who are coming along, who are going to carry on the good work of Rotary for many years, we hope, in future. And so we look forward to have the new ideas from new members. But as I've said, also from those who are long-standing, they can still come up with some good ideas. And I remember in my previous Rotary Club, we had one of our members who in his 90s would come up with different ideas. But not only did he come up with different ideas, if we said that's a good idea, he said, right, I'll do something about it. And he did. He was a remarkable man. Went on to be 98. There is, of course, plenty of opportunities outside our club. Rotary is an incredible organization, more than 35,000 clubs worldwide. And as we know, once we've joined Rotary, we are entitled, and I always underline that word, entitled, to attend Rotary clubs anywhere in the world. I've been fortunate to do this in Canada, the United States, and Malaysia, apart from other Rotary things in other parts of the world. And you always get a really warm welcome wherever you go. And so I would encourage everybody to visit other clubs if they can, see how things are done there. And of course, there's the Rotary International Convention. It's a convention that's held in a different city every year, and it's open to all Rotarians and their guests. I've been fortunate enough to attend 14 live conventions, and the last two have been virtual conventions because of the COVID restrictions. The last one was earlier this month, and it should have been in Taipei, but it was a virtual convention. I do encourage you to do that, if only once in your time in Rotary, because it is incredible to meet Rotarians from all over the world. You get into conversations, you meet all sorts of new people, you learn all sorts of new things. Really a great experience. Next year it's in Houston, Texas. We hope this time it will be live. President-elect Ian and Gillian have told me earlier today that they've signed up for that. So if anybody else is keen to go, have a word with Ian or myself. We'll tell you a little bit more about it. And then the following year it's Melbourne, and then Singapore, and then Calgary, Alberta, USA. So there are plenty of opportunities. Well, as I say, this has been a test meeting. We just wanted to see how it would work out, a hybrid meeting. We will be able to we'll be reviewing this after the meeting, see what we can learn from what has happened today, where we can make some improvements, because it's the very first attempt. So we're coming up now to 2 o'clock. We said we would close at 2 o'clock, and I'm certainly not going to let it overrun. Thank you, everybody who's come along today. Thank you for those who've joined me on Zoom. It's been great to have, it's been Ian and there's been Hugh on here on Zoom, and thank you very much for that. And Colleen was on earlier, but she's had to go now. So thank you very much for that. Stay safe, keep well, and we hope that in due course we'll all be able to meet together again and enjoy each other's company. So thank you very much, everybody, for having joined in this meeting today. Thank you and goodbye.